All right, so hi everyone, welcome back to our Cultivators community event. Today we're going to be talking about creating safe spaces for change inside your company. I'm very excited because today we have an amazing speaker. We have Penny Misquitta, and she is an amazing associate director in research and development at Johnson & Johnson. And she's going to be talking about how to create safe spaces to foster creativity, promote change in the workplace. And then afterwards, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion on how to build those safe spaces, because we want you to take everything that Penny is talking about and apply it to your own organization. So a little bit about Penny before we get started. She has worked in pharma for over 14 years at Johnson & Johnson. She has previously worked in the global talent management within the Office of Creative Engagement, which is amazing. Penny also leads the safety data analytics team within the global medical safety operations. Whew, it's a lot of titles, and now supports cross-sector pharmacovigilance work. She's also a TEDx Johnson & Johnson curator, TEDx speaker, and coach. And now I'm gonna send it off to Penny to lead us through this great discussion.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Make sure you can hear me. All right, great. So I believe that everyone needs psychological safety in order to be their best every day. So when you hear the word psychological safety, perhaps certain terms come to mind, such as, safety net, freedom to say what you want, freedom to be yourself. And maybe some of you might even be thinking, that's like where I'm comfortable. But before we dig into how I build safe spaces and then maybe explore how you do the same, I would like to get a little bit further into what this definition of psychological safety is. So in a recent article that came out this year with Forbes, they actually talk about how comfort is not the same. So this infographic actually explains that quite well. If you're so comfortable in your safety zone, that's how people actually don't stretch themselves. They don't go anywhere. They're not willing to try something new. And that's not where you want to be. At the same time, you don't want to have people be so comfortable that they're reckless and irresponsible, where they can actually hurt people and say and do things without any kind of responsibility or repercussions. You don't want that either. And below the green line, you have, what you want to avoid is you don't want to stick your neck out there just to show that you're reckless and willing to throw yourself into this comfort zone when you haven't been thoughtful and thinking about how is this going to help your team, or how is it going to take your community to a better place. So what's the happy space? That's this last quadrant where you're outside of your comfort zone, but you have that ability to stretch yourself, to try something new, to grow, to make progress, to fail. And yes, there's this concept of trust, but it is a bit different from psychological safety, because trust is what you have with two people, where you can be yourself and have that conviction you'll be treated kindly. People are going to assume the best of you at all times unless proven otherwise, right? And if you don't have that trust, like between two people, then you're kind of walking on eggshells, and that's this other quadrant here, right? Now, if you have trust between people in the community, and you have that conviction that anyone and everyone in the group is going to be treated kindly, and you will assume the best from them at all times, congratulations, you've reached psychological safety. On the other hand, if you have these guarded relationships that silo themselves off and multiply, then you have toxic politics, which is a big challenge. It's not impossible to overcome, but it is a challenge. So we've established safety is not the same as comfort, psychological safety. So what does psychological safety sound like? In my opinion, it sounds something like this. nothing will be held against you as long as you mean well. Again, nothing will be held against you as long as you mean well. So you are free to fail, you're free to be yourself, free to ask for help, people assume the best of you. And if you have this environment, you really can grow, thrive, make progress, and innovate in real time every day. And that's what I believe all teams need to be successful. So you have a new team or community, right? We're going to ask the question, or I ask the question whenever that happens with me, do we have psychological safety? So let's pause for a second. We're going to do a quick poll. For those of you that are on, I'm curious to see, how safe do you feel right now with your team, your department, your organization? Let's take a vote. And let me know if the polling is done, Melissa. I'll wait for you. So let's see what the results are. Oh, this is great. 67% of us feel very safe, and 33% of us feel somewhat safe. So it's interesting that not everyone said they feel very safe, right? So thanks for that. Maybe we could close out the poll. So this is the flow chart that I have, that what goes on in my brain whenever I have this. And if the answer is no, or I think a team doesn't have psychological safety, I want to try to uncover what is holding us back from having that. What are some questions I might ask? A recent colleague of mine in the HR space actually came across something that has a specific name, this tool, and I've never really used it, but the questions are actually what I asked. So if something doesn't smell right, it's stinky fish. Something's not right. And what are the questions you want to ask, right? So these are the things that you want to think about. What are the uncertainties? What is everyone saying? And, you know, what is making people feel anxious? What are the things they just can't get over? Now, I highly recommend don't go into a team that you think has no psychological safety and be like, we're going to do stinky fish exercise, because then you probably get crickets, and maybe if you're lucky, one person will speak up. So sometimes you have to be patient. You have to consider, you know, what is exactly going on. Observe, take your time to understand. Maybe the team is not comfortable in a group setting. So I'll give you a very simple example. Sometimes what everybody's thinking and no one is saying, and the thing that people are kind of anxious about, could be something so simple that just giving them permission to go to that safe space is all they need for psychological safety. When I was, you know, honored to launch TEDxJ&J in Latin America, sometimes I found that all they needed for psychological safety was that permission to know they could do their own thing and have a TEDxJ&J talk in their own language, or they could make their own materials for the program and create their own grassroots movement with what they want to do that's meaningful for them in Spanish and Portuguese. They don't have to do everything in English. It could be something as simple as that. So if you don't have psychological safety, you want to keep kind of peeling the layers of the onion, get to the point where you've uncovered what is it that's holding the team back or the community back. Once you have it, congratulations, but now you have to maintain it. So here's a link to where you can go if you're interested in the stinky fish exercise. And the next thing I wanted to do is actually share how I do my best to sustain psychological safety. So I have to ask that question often. Just because we have it doesn't mean we're going to keep it. So that's one thing that I am very aware of as a leader. Just because we have it doesn't mean we're going to keep it. We have to work hard and ask that question. Do we have it? Do we still have it? Consistent messaging around the culture I want to keep. You know, diversity and inclusion is more than just age, gender, race, geography, and things like that. And I think it's also the way people think. Someone that comes from a totally different sector may solve a problem differently, or even medical physicians of different backgrounds are going to approach a problem differently depending on what their specialty is. So you want to have that consistent messaging that you're inviting ideas from everywhere and anyone. Being present in the background. So this is important, letting people just do their thing and getting out of the way. Sometimes people just need that psychological safety in the sense they know that, you know, you're going to support them. If one of them goes out and tries something new or needs help, they can do it, but they have the team leaders background to back them. This next one is interesting and also sometimes hard for leaders that want to have this great culture on their team. When people come to them and say all these things that are wrong with the group, or what they think is wrong with the group and holding the group back from having psychological safety, the leader's like, oh my gosh, can't believe this is happening on my team. And, you know, rather than being reactive, I think it's important to take a step back and realize that if people feel comfortable enough to come tell you that they are not okay, you probably have psychological safety. So it's important to accept that people will not always be okay, but they feel safe enough to tell you that. And then, of course, we mentioned comfort and safety. Trusting yourself and what you're comfortable with will actually help you thrive and tackle problems and the next chaos that presents itself, because you're constantly on your toes. You're constantly, you know, challenging yourself and others. So I've talked a lot about how I try to create comfortable spaces, but now I'm going to turn the table on myself. What do I need for psychological safety? So for me as an individual, when there are presentations and leaders, you know, present something and then secretly they hope, no, please no one raise your hand and ask me a difficult question now, I'm the person that raises my hand. When everyone is thinking something stinky, I'm the person thinking.
Sorry, Penny, you're having a little bit of technical issues. Can you start a few sentences back?
Okay, what's the last thing you heard?
The last thing is like you don't want people to be afraid of asking you hard questions, I believe it was.
Okay, did you hear the last? Okay, I'll just say people are not always comfortable, but they will thrive in that next problem that presents itself. I assume you heard that. So I said I was going to turn the table on myself and tell you what I need for psychological safety. So I'm the person in the room that raises their hand and nobody wants to speak and say what everybody else is saying. I'm actually will, you know, speak up and say something in a stinky fish exercise. So people might, you know, label me as a troublemaker or a rebel. And I do embrace that because to an extent, okay, what do rebels want? There is an infographic that actually means this, and I wanted to share that with you. Hopefully you can still hear me. So what do rebels want? We're not troublemakers. I'm not a troublemaker. We actually care enough to challenge the status quo. We do want that environment where you push us. We already know we're different, and we want you to embrace that in all of its glory. We want to be challenged, and we don't want lip service. Yes, you need to help coach us around, you know, organization politics, and we do take risks, and we do want to fail fast if you let us try things that might not work so that we can get to a better product. Most importantly of all, we want you to appreciate us, and we will move mountains for you. So for me personally, I also need to never be put in a box because I can never just be one thing. I want to be many things. And just like Four from Divergent, that's what I need for psychological safety. So now I'm here to make all of you feel safe.
Sorry, what was the last part? It like cut out at like the weirdest time. I'm so sorry.
I don't know. It might be my connection. So I said, now I'm curious what makes all of you feel safe. Maybe the recording I gave you is better quality.
Like we would love, feel free to take yourself on mute. Now we're gonna open to the discussion part. So everyone feel free.
So I just
So I
wanted to
see a note
say,
from,
I really like the way you started the presentation, and the fact that you came to the rebel part at the end, I think is, I can relate to it. What I find in a lot of organizations is that the culture imposes an attitude. That attitude is actually, to step back and to not actually participate. And so it's the rebels that you need to pay attention to, and you need to give them that freedom to become more psychologically safe. There are many things that make me feel safe. One of them is a strong leader that not just talks about innovation, but actually puts money and time behind innovation. And I think those are very important factors, because innovation is not about just the idea. Innovation is actually about having impact. And so I think that those are the two things that actually make me feel the most comfortable. Does that resonate with you?
thank you for sharing. So are there, and I don't know if anyone else is typing, I'm assuming my chat is not lagging, but I was curious if anyone on the call has had an experience where they've had to build some kind of safe space. How did you go about, doing that? And I'm also interested because I'm continuously, like I said, it's a continuous process. Just because you have it doesn't mean you keep it. How do you sustain psychological safety? It's something I, as a leader, have to work very hard to do all the time.
I can chime in.
I noticed, Carolina, you went off mute briefly, which is usually the like, hey, I'm about to speak. And maybe you were going to share your answer to what makes you safe, which is okay. But I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, no, I wanted to say that I really like this slide that you put up here. I just can relate to this so much. I actually posted something on social media last week. I had a mentor who passed away 5 years ago. And I think at one point during my PhD, I was in this position where I felt I had to choose between being a clinician, being a scientist, being someone that runs an NGO. And then he was the one who told me, no, you don't have to choose one of those. You can be all. Like, I do that too. And you can be all. And I just really felt that this slide really represented that. So I really like that. But I also was thinking about, how did you create a safe space? I run an organization, a non-for-profit organization, and that's one of the things that is very important to me. I have a team of 8 people, and I really want to create that safe space for them. But I think you sometimes have to put, like the way I do it is sometimes you have to put aside your own ego, because you're not always right. And I think that was difficult for me in the beginning, but I'm getting there, that other people have opinions that sometimes are better than yours, or have ideas that are better than yours, or have feedback on something that your vision, something you're trying to do. And I think by allowing that and not being defensive, that's how you can create a safe space. That's at least what I've been trying. So I think you sometimes have to put aside your ego and just listen to what other people have to say in your team.
I'm curious if anyone's willing to share, what are those scenarios that are stinky fish for you personally, or that you've come across that would say that you're not feeling very psychologically safe, somewhat safe, depending. So I know we polled on that, and it's a small group, and as a statistician, this is a biased sample. However, I still want to know, if you're willing to share, what do you think makes people answer a poll that way when they're not quite sure if you should say they're psychologically safe? What do you think some of those, stinky fish things might be?
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to participate in the poll because I was conducting it, but I can speak.
You were running it.
Yeah, I can speak from a previous experience where I've had like a manager kind of dismiss my confusion of like, hey, I'm the kind of person that like, if I ever get assigned something, I'm gonna do my best to figure it out. And by the time I bring it up to my manager, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this, it's like I've done everything I could. Like, I know President Obama kind of talks about his position. It's like by the time a problem gets to my desk, it's because like everyone tried and they couldn't figure it out, and now I have to like jump in. So I kind of like treated my previous manager as that, right? And so every time I'm like, oh, I'm not sure how we do this, he's like, oh, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, but I'm the one that's working on it. I'm bringing it to you because I can't figure it out. So you say we figure it out, which I'm hearing you figure it out after I've expressed I can't figure it out. So I think that like it's interesting because also like I work with Steve obviously, and Steve kind of stops and is like, okay, if this is hard or if this is difficult for you, let's take a break, like let's figure it out together, which is the complete opposite of that. And that for me makes me very psychologically safe. Because it's like, okay, like if I like, and I had to like kind of unpack that and undo that behavior pattern of, okay, if it's too difficult, my manager is going to be here to support me rather than like throw it back on my plate and make me feel bad for not being smart enough or competent enough or whatever enough to figure it out. So instead he would take a step and was like, okay, let's break it down. What are you struggling with? What's the disconnect? Where's the gap? And how can I help? I think always asking, how can I help? And kind of seeing how the person thinks about it allows a different perspective to jump in like, okay, here's where I think we can improve on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You also touched on what the rebels want. Like, don't give us lip service. Kind of like you actually need to show that you're supporting, and that can come in different ways. Sometimes getting out of the way, sometimes more hands-on. So that's interesting. So I have a new team that I've integrated. I know in my mind what I think might be good for, maintaining psychological safety. A disappointment for me with COVID is I couldn't go to Switzerland and meet them. So I acquired a Swiss team earlier this year, and I've never met them. And we try to do video calls and things like that. And I talk to them regularly. I feel like I already know them. We've done virtual team building and other things, but I don't know if any of you have any tips if you've built new teams during this like COVID thing. And luckily for me, most of my team is virtual anyway. But when you have a new company, a new acquisition, a new team, kind of a new culture where you're integrating different functions, and they had different bosses and things like that, different departments, and they're sort of like coming into one team now, into a culture that they're not used to always speaking up and being transparent. I started inviting them to our team meetings where everybody like talks about different things and it's very transparent. It may have been a shock to them at first, but I think slowly they're starting to speak up. Some are more talkative than the others, right? It's a personality thing too. I wonder if any of you have any tips or thoughts around that for me, because like I said, I'm still learning too.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. I don't know that I have tips, but I can at least have empathy. And that, like, I think everyone on the line are pretty much veterans of, virtual work during normal times. Like, I think most of us have been pretty comfortable with that kind of thing anyway. But we're used to the ability to have those peaks of those in-person moments, right? And so that it's like, oh yeah, I'm onboarding a new team member. Of course, that's going to be in person. Like, I've onboarded 3 or 4 new team members since kind of COVID times. And normally that onboarding would always happen in person. And then, yeah, the day-to-day stuff's going to be virtual. And so it's it's weird. My stinky fish thing was going to be kind of, how do you build safety with someone, with new people and kind of new groups, right? And that, like, you have kind of this shared ethos. You think, even with this group, if we think about the cultivator community, right? We have some sense of shared ethos. Hey, we read the community guidelines. We said this is why this is happening. Like, okay, the invite came from Steve. I kind of have a sense of his vibe. Like, I kind of know what's up here. But you're joining this meeting and like, okay, I'm seeing this different face I've never seen before. These other people, and like, I think they're kind of on the same page as me, but like, I don't know. Like, how do you kind of build that safety with new people is hard. And I feel like it just takes time. Like, so yeah, I don't have an answer to it, but like, I'm definitely also focused on just like how to do that with new people.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. I know it's interesting times, and I have tried to kind of ease the Swiss team into it because I do know the culture might be a little different. And to complicate things, I have one person living in the UK and going to Switzerland every week, and it's just how the Swiss people are. I mean, they have a place in Switzerland, but they go back to the UK. And of course, you guys know with COVID, there's like the stop. So then they're like, oh my gosh, I have to go to the office. I don't want to get COVID. And I'm like, hold on, why do you have to go to the office? They're like, well, I see these people every day. I report to XYZ. They're used to having coffee with, I was like, yeah, but it's COVID. No one is going to go to the office right now. And I'm your manager. I'm telling you it's okay to work from home or just stay in the UK, because what if you get stuck and you can't go, home or something? So I had to talk to HR because Switzerland has specific rules about, people working in Switzerland and maybe living in a border country like Germany and France. And, there's all these things I've had to work with. But along the way, I think slowly they see that it's okay to ask those weird questions. You don't have to just force yourself to do one thing or the other. And they have to kind of come and say, I'm really sorry, I don't want to go to the office. Just, I know it's clean and this and that, but do I have to go in every day or 4 days a week? I'm like, maybe you can go in once or twice a week till wave 3. And even wave 3, only 60% of the people are going to go on site. So it's just been interesting. And, even I've been in new waters with, trying to figure out and navigate as we go. But I think slowly they're getting there. Like you said, Steve, it takes time. And I'm just trying to be patient, but also let them really integrate with the team. I have about 20 people or so in all 4 regions. So the Swiss team, I'm just trying to let them integrate. And I think eventually they'll get there. If they're not there, I want to say maybe they're like 70% there, and I've had them since January 1st. So I'm hoping by, maybe next quarter, they'll feel even more safer and speak up more in meetings. They speak up, one-on-one with me and my manager, but in the larger group meeting, I notice they don't talk much unless I kind of ask them to. Yeah. So that's just something that I think will come with time.
Yeah, I think.
Speaking of time, I just want to be respectful. I am able to stay on. I don't know if there's other people that have to leave. Melissa, I don't know how long our session is for, but I'm able to stay on. I don't know if anyone has questions for me or other things you might want to dig into while we're all here talking about this topic. I think it's so important to me always, but it's even more important now with everything going on in the world and people at least having psychological safety to be able to do their job. I think is something as an individual and a leader I have to work at. So it's up to you guys to stay on or ask questions. I just want to be respectful of time.
I would say we take the conversation to Slack. So anyone who has additional things to chat about, that would be my guidance. Like, hey, let's try to make our Slack space as psychologically safe as we can as we continue to try to get to know each other and everything. I'll pass back to Melissa to close, but just want to say thank you so much, Penny, for doing this. Penny and I used to work together for quite some time, so great to see you and thank you for this.
Yes,
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I definitely agree. I think that if there's anything we could do to make the cultivator community more psychologically safe, this community is very much co-created with the members. So we're always open for your feedback and ideas. If you want to nominate speakers or have specific topics you're interested in, please let us know. Penny, I think your question of like, how do you manage teams remotely during COVID? I think that's also a great question to ask, like, as we are a community here to support one another's as we're trying to implement change in the organizations, as well as work through all these different issues that we're all facing. I know you're not alone in this. So thank you again, everyone, for joining this event. Thank you again so much to Penny for bringing up this topic. I think it's definitely something that's not many people are fully aware of unless they're in the community space. So we're gonna post this video up shortly and look forward to seeing everyone back on the Slack channel and continuing the conversation from there.